Welcome, Fantasizers. This is Anthony from Your Big Fat Fantasy. We're back at it with episode 21.
Yeah, I'm Nicholas Logan. Again, this is your BFF, your Big Fat Fantasy, coming to you once again for week 11, start of week 11, first video for the week. We'll get right into it and start it with our picks of the week.
Yeah, we got some fun topics we're also going to discuss as well, and then we're going to be going over every matchup for the week.
We'll probably do that in the next episode.
Yeah.
And we were going to do a little Thursday night, but obviously, by the time we're recording right now, the game is about to start. So
yeah.
So no Thursday night picks, but we will, on our next video, give you, like you said, our Sunday picks and everything like that.
So yeah, let's just get right into it. Gonna be going with my first miss was Jerry Jeudy. He actually got injured this game against the Titans. The Broncos lost 17-10, and he was only targeted once, and then he got carted off with 0 points. So a very unfortunate situation. I was expecting him to just explode this game, and that was the complete opposite. So yeah, Jerry Jeudy, my first miss.
Yeah, then you mentioned someone that left the game with an injury, so I'll mention my pick. Juju Smith also left the game with an injury, with a concussion. It was a brutal hit, and he was down for quite a while.
Yeah, that was bad.
Yeah, he ended up leaving the game with 5.3 fantasy points, caught 2 of his 4 targets for 33 yards before leaving. He probably could have had a big game because Kadarius Toney did benefit a lot from that game, especially since the Chiefs were already down McCole Hardman, and Kadarius Toney ended up finishing with 19 fantasy points, which some of that could have easily gone to Juju, but
yeah,
Kadarius Toney should have another big week this week. Juju not practicing, McCole Hardman not practicing again. So
yeah, everyone's out. I believe McCole Hardman just landed on injured reserve a couple hours ago. So
yeah, and I think Marvis Valdez-Scantling is also questionable.
Yeah, I believe he was just back at practice, but yeah, that wide receiver room is definitely looking banged up. Definitely looking good for Kadarius Toney, but we'll get into that later.
Yeah.
Going to my second miss is going to be Darnell Mooney. Only had 4 receptions for 57 yards, only 9.7 PPR points, finished as the wide receiver 45 on the week. And yeah, this was just kind of a running game, I feel like. It was a little back and forth between the Lions and Chicago, and the Lions came out victorious at the end. So yeah, it was just not really a passing game. I believe Justin Fields only had 167 passing yards. So when your quarterback's only throwing for 167 passing yards, your wide receiver's not really gonna go off as you thought. So
yeah,
that's what happened.
He still almost put up like 40 fantasy points. Justin Fields, which we'll talk about in a bit.
Yeah.
Going into my first hit, I only had 1 miss, which was Juju, who left the game with the injury. CMC was my first hit, lowest scoring out of all my hits. He had 17.7 fantasy points. He did have 14 rushing attempts, but only 38 rushing yards. He had 2.71 yards per carry, which was his lowest of the season. We're talking about a guy that's getting big play yards, just was stopped a lot at the line of scrimmage in that game. But he is the PPR GOAT, as you can say. He did catch 4 of his 6 targets for 39 yards, so had 1 more extra receiving yard on 8 less attempts, I guess you can say. And he did have a rushing touchdown, so that rushing touchdown did salvage his day, finished as the RB12 in Week 10. And I know people are still going to be starting CMC going forward. Obviously, you're not going to bench him, but Kyle Shanahan did say that they do have a plan to make it kind of a running back committee back there. I know we said that you're not going to trade all these picks for CMC for it to be a committee, but Kyle Shanahan, once again, back with his shenanigans, as you can say. And Elijah Mitchell, he did run extremely well in his first game
carries,
back since
I believe.
Week 1. Yeah, he had 18 carries, so he out-carried CMC, and he did have 89 yards, 4.95 yards per carry. So with 4 more attempts, did a lot more efficiently than CMC did in the rushing game. So just watch out going forward. Maybe Elijah Mitchell you can plug in as a extra flex spot on RB2 going forward if they're going to be running the ball as much as the Niners like to do. So.
Yeah, I saw a joke that only Kyle Shanahan would give up all those picks just to give Elijah Mitchell 18 carries.
That's true.
but I mean, it worked out for them. My team lost. They blew out the Chargers. They didn't blow them out, but they got a nice gritty win against them. So good for them. Just gonna go into my last miss. Travis Etienne. He did finish as the RB25 on the week. That's a solid flex play, but still I expected a lot more. only had 3 receptions for 28 receiving yards and 45 rushing yards on 11 carries. So he finished with 10.3 PPR points. I was a little surprised they only gave him 11 carries. I felt like they should have ran the ball a little more. I felt like maybe that could have been the reason why they lost to the Chiefs. So, yeah, Travis Etienne, my last miss.
And I'll go into my next hit. It's going to be Stephon Diggs. Had 24.8 fantasy points. Another big game once again for Mr. Diggs. Finished as the wide receiver 7 overall. And he saw 16 targets, which was his most on the season. So was targeted a lot against his former team, the Minnesota Vikings. And he caught 12 of those targets. So 12 receptions actually matches his career high since joining the Buffalo Bills, which he did in week 2. So 2 career highs in receptions once again for Stephon Diggs, leading to another big game. Had 128 receiving yards, but failed to score a touchdown once again in his second straight week. But another efficient day and had an incredible catch. I know everyone's talking about that Justin Jefferson catch of the year, but Stephon Diggs' catch would have been the talk of that the game of the year if it wasn't for that JJ catch.
Yeah, both definitely crazy catches. It's going to bring me to my first hit. Justin Fields had another monster day, 39.38 PPR points, had 13 carries, 147 rushing yards, and 2 rushing touchdowns to go along with 167 passing yards and 2 passing touchdowns in the 30-31 loss to the Lions. I mean, we're just kind of seeing Justin Fields break out. It's very good for Justin Field owners. We were saying he's looking like a dynasty quarterback 1. I believe he's in the top 5 right now. So yeah, Justin Fields, he's showing us that he's that man.
Yeah, definitely. And another guy who has been bounced back since coming back from suspension, DeAndre Hopkins, my next hit, had 19.8 fantasy points, was targeted 14 times once again, and caught 10 of those passes. And yeah, D-Hop, man, you expected him if you got him late in drafts and kept him on your bench, and now you're able to finally start him again. You're happy, and he's been the wide receiver 2 ever since coming back from that suspension. He's only 0.8 less points behind Tyreek Hill, who's arguably the number 1 wide receiver right now in fantasy football.
Yeah.
Going forward even. And Hollywood is coming back this week. He is back at practice, so that can either be good news for D-Hop. It could open the field up more for him, or it could be bad news for D-Hop with Hollywood Brown, getting into a lot of that target share. But nonetheless, D-Hop, another big game in Week 10.
Yeah, they also lost a big target in Zach Ertz for the rest of the year. So Trey McBride is stepping up. We'll talk about him a little later. But I'm going to be going into my second and last hit of the day. It's going to be Nick Chubb. Had 15.1 PPR points, finished as the running back 13. I also expected a little more production out of him. I know Miami's not really good against the run, but they were good against the run against the Browns this game. Nick Chubb had 1 touchdown, 63 rushing yards, and only 11 carries. So, I mean, they got to feed Chubb the rock more. I saw a little song. They got to feed Chubb the rock, and they didn't do that this game. So
So that's your last pick of the week. You went 2 for 3. I went 4 and 1, and
2 out of 5.
2 out of 5. But two hits, 3 misses.
Yeah,
I got 4 hits, 1 miss. My last hit is gonna be Amon-Ra St. Brown, which said when I picked him, I said it was gonna be a bounce back week for him, and it was. 22.10 fantasy points, finished just behind Stephon Diggs, who was wide receiver 7. Amon-Ra St. Brown was the wide receiver 8.
Yeah.
Caught 10 of his 11 targets, had which was his season high for receptions, and had 119 receiving yards, another season high. So it looks like he's bouncing back in Week 10, which I want to kind of finish with Amon-Ra St. Brown as my last pick, because I'm going to go into a little segment talking about players that you drafted early, players that you relied on to be stars of your team and haven't really produced but had big Week 10 bounce backs, possibly, maybe. But I'm going to name 7 players that had big Week 10s that I believe going forward will finish in their position 1 range. And show you guys why you guys drafted these guys and why you've held on to them, or why you went out and maybe bought them low, traded them for low, or you might have to regret it if you did sell them low or drop these players or
Yeah, some guys you may have gotten early in the draft, some guys you may have gotten late in the draft that are starting to pay off. So yeah.
Yeah, so let's get right into it. Starting with, of course, the Sun God, Amon-Ra St. Brown. It's his first time finishing in the wide receiver 1 range since week 2. It's actually his second highest scoring game of the season in week 10. And when he's hot, Amon-Ra St. Brown. You saw what he did last year, the last 6-7 weeks of the season. He was on waivers. You picked him up. We said it multiple times again, like a broken record. He won a lot of people leagues with the way he produced. When he scores 20 points, it seems like he just keeps scoring 20, 20, 20.
Yeah.
He started the season with, a 20-point game and then or 20-plus game, then had another 20-plus fantasy game, and then got injured and then came back and then had more little injuries. But he looks healthy. He looks like the only wide receiver right now on the team. I know they're saying Jamison Williams is coming back in December, but we'll see if the Lions are losing games. Why risk the young rookie's health for a season that really won't matter? But that, again, just like D-Hop, that could be good things for Amon-Ra when Jamison Williams comes back. It could open up the field more, or it could hurt him, and he might have to share some of those targets with the highly talented Jamison Williams. But Amon-Ra St. Brown looks like he could be another league winner now. Congratulations if you went out and bought him low, because he's looking like he's going to finish in that, and why you guys draft him in the second, third round of a lot of drafts. Which leads me to my next wide receiver, going to be Terry McLaurin. Had a big game. He hasn't had a bad season, I guess you would say. He was kind of in the wide receiver 2 range.
Yeah.
But with Taylor Heineke there, he is potentially a wide receiver 1. Another guy that you drafted in the second, third round, who when Carson Wentz was in there, didn't look good. But since Taylor Heineke stepped in, he hasn't had a game of getting less than double-digit fantasy points. And this was actually his first time scoring 20-plus points since week 11 of last year. So it's almost been a full year for Terry McLaurin since he's hit that 20-point fantasy point range. And he did it this week, and I believe he's going to do it going forward. Even when they had Jahan Dotson came back, but Taylor Heineke still kept going to Mr. Scary Terry. Was the wide receiver 8 overall. Been the wide receiver 8 overall since Heineke's taken over. And even in a game where Heineke only had 5 or 6 fantasy points, he threw for 211 yards, and 61% of those yards went to Terry Scary, who finished that day with 128 total yards in Week 10, caught 8 of his 11 targets, and it looks like they're going to rely on him late. If Washington, the last few weeks, they've kind of been hanging on late in games, and Mr. Reliable has been Scary Terry, beating good corners in those games and looking super good. He did against, Stephon Gilmore with that amazing catch against the Colts a couple weeks ago where he mossed them. Played a very good corners, and James Bradbury and Darius Slay and the Eagles defense, and you know how good the Eagles defense has been, and torched them for his best fantasy game. So
yeah, we always talk about the Scary Terry and the Taylor Heineke chemistry. They always just seem to have, this special connection. Yeah. And we're seeing it right now.
And it doesn't look like they're gonna go back to Carson Wentz even when healthy. It looks like they're going to just keep riding with Heineke.
Yeah, they just beat the best team in the NFL. So, I mean, why are you going to go to Carson Wentz,
They beat the Packers with him. They beat the Colts, the Eagles. So they've beaten some pretty decent teams. They're a winning team when Taylor Heineke's there, and one of the reasons for that is he knows how to find Terry McLaurin.
Yeah, his favorite target.
So go out, get Terry Scary, start him in your lineups if you've been resting him, or if he's kind of been like a boom or bust, or consistent 15 points you get from him. But I can see him getting 20-plus fantasy points going forward.
Yeah, wide receiver 13 right now, so he's a high-end wide receiver too, so we could definitely benefit from having him.
And like I said, he's been the wide receiver 8 since Heineke's taken over. So just a lot of potential there for him going forward. And I don't think you're going to have to wait a whole year for him to get another 20-point fantasy points. No. I would guarantee he does it at least 2 or 3 more times.
Yeah, Heineke's his guy.
Fantasy playoff.
He just needed his guy. He found his guy.
So, like I said, he's caught 61% of Taylor Heineke's yards in that game. And we'll go on to another quarterback. Aaron Rodgers, the only quarterback that I'm going to really talk about that had a big Week 10. Aaron Rodgers finished as the QB 10 overall. Had 19.36 fantasy points, which was his most on the season so far, which is not a lot. 19 points is not a lot from a guy you want as your starting quarterback.
Quarterback 10 is not even.
Yeah, it's not that good, but
hey,
that's a starting quarterback that you can put. And it's the first time he's done that all year. He hasn't finished as a top 10 quarterback this whole year. So, and this is a guy who's finished as a top 10 quarterback every single year in fantasy, except for 2013 when he was injured and 2017 when he was injured. The only 2 years Aaron Rodgers did not finish as a top 10 overall fantasy quarterback. He's never actually hit 10. I think 9 was his lowest in any healthy year. So he's usually around top 5, top 2, top 1, 7, 6. He's around that range there. But Aaron Rodgers, obviously he had a big connection with Christian Watson this game.
Yeah.
And who knows if he can get that confidence back, who knows what he can do. Maybe they just played the Cowboys, and I even tweeted it. I said, will the Cowboys ever beat Aaron Rodgers and the Packers? I feel like every time the Cowboys play the Packers, they lose.
Yeah.
It's been the story for the last 5-6 years.
Same broken record, yeah.
Yeah, it's just been going on for years and years. Whenever Aaron Rodgers plays the Cowboys, he turns up and goes off.
Yeah.
And he did it again. Maybe it was just a good game because of the Cowboys, or maybe he goes back and finishes within that QB 10 range where that's the reason you guys drafted him late, to be that sleeper quarterback that you guys wanted. But yeah, Aaron Rodgers, I believe it was a bounce back week, and I feel like he can build that confidence going forward. And we'll see what he does in the Thursday night game, and we'll talk about our next show, see if I'm right or wrong. And that'll lead me to my next little group of positions. It'll be the tight end position. Gonna go start with Dalton Schultz. These next two tight ends, I drafted them both in redraft leagues. My first one's gonna be Dalton Schultz. Finished as the tight end 3 overall this last week. Had 17.4 fantasy points. Caught 6 of 8 targets for 54 yards and had his first touchdown of the season. A guy that I spoke about like 3 or 4 weeks ago, saying go buy low on the Dallas Cowboys player. Go buy Tony Pollard low. Go buy Dalton Schultz low, because when Dak Prescott's back, their offense runs a lot better. And they do. It seems like the defense doesn't show up when Dak's there. When Cooper Rush was the quarterback, the defense was not allowing more than 20 points a game. Now, since Dak's been back, they're allowing 20-plus points. Seems like almost every time Dak's out there, and Dak gets all the blame for it. It is what it is, but either way, in terms of fantasy relevance, Dalton Schultz should be a tight end 1 to finish this season. If you look, he was the tight end 6 to start the season. Obviously, Kelsey and Andrews and Pitts were the top 3. Then it was Darren Waller and Kittle. Dalton Schultz right behind that 5 kind of elite group.
Yeah.
And I think Dalton Schultz finishes in that tight end 1 range again. If you look here, when Dak Prescott's the quarterback, he's getting 7.25 targets per game. And when Cooper Rush was quarterback and Dalton Schultz was healthy, he was getting less than 4 targets a game. So a big bump in targets, a big bump in usage when Dak's on the field with Dalton Schultz. And he's finished as a tight end 1 in 3 games since Dak's been back. So he's finishing in that tight end 1 range ever since Dak came back. So a guy, and had his best game, a guy that I think going forward will continue to be a tight end 1, a guy that you can rely on to win leagues, a guy who probably won some leagues last year, a guy you picked up on waivers, Dalton Schultz.
Dak. They just needed Dak Prescott back. You know, CeeDee Lamb had 150 yards against the Packers.
His first 100-yard game of the season.
Yeah, so Dalton Schultz and CeeDee Lamb are scary players as long as Dak Prescott's under center.
Yeah, and Tony Pollard too has been one of the best running backs. I know Zeke's been out, but still.
Yeah, I feel like maybe Zeke should just stay out.
Yeah.
At this point.
Yeah.
Tony Pollard he's looking like a beast, but yeah.
Yeah, he's fast. He finds holes and he scores touchdowns. Exactly what you want from your running back.
Yeah.
And that'll lead me to my next tight end, another guy drafted in redraft leagues, Colt Kmet. I actually named my team after Colt Kmet. My team name is Super Bowl Committed. Committed spelled Kmetted. So we're kind of looking Super Bowl Committed right now in that league.
Yeah.
I'm sitting on I think the 5th or 6th seed right now, so just kind of scratching the surface of playoffs. But Colt Kmet's not even on my team anymore. I dropped him. I tried to pick him up this week, but I lost to him in the waivers. It is what it is. I'm still not changing my team name. I still believe we're Super Bowl committed. But Colt Kmet probably could be that tight end that you want to roster. He's the tight end 1 overall the last 3 weeks. And he was a tight end overall tight end 1 overall once again. He caught 4 of 7 targets for 74 yards and 2 touchdowns. His last 3 games, he has 5 total touchdowns. So back-to-back weeks, he's had 2 touchdowns. He's looking like Justin Fields' his favorite target. Yeah, I know you said in the beginning of the show, Justin Fields didn't throw for a lot of yards. Colt Kmet is getting most of those yards. Though. Yeah. It's not the receivers. It's Colt Kmet. They're either going to run with Fields or Montgomery, or they're going to throw to Colt Kmet, kind of be that red zone target. A guy that I was fairly high on to start the season because this is the kind of potential. I said he can have these big boom weeks where Fields is going to find him in that red zone. He's a 6'6" tight end. big body. He's fast. He has good hands.
He was only 23.
He's young and
So sitting at tight end 10 right now in PPR.
yeah, and that's just from the last 3 weeks alone. Before that, I'm sure he was like a tight end 30 or 25 or something. But
yeah, these big weeks definitely bumped him up for sure.
And I could see him going forward to finish in that tight end one range, just like Dalton Schultz. Two guys that if they're on waivers still, or if you can get them low, go get them low.
Yeah, for sure.
Get them low for some. You have extra running backs or receivers, and you need a tight end. I think these are two guys you want to target if you're in a dynasty league. Maybe you have some picks because Dalton Schultz is still fairly young. You just had Cole Kmet's 23. 23. Guys that you could maybe build your future. I know Dalton Schultz is in contract year, but I see the Cowboys bringing him back. You know how much the Cowboys love their franchise tight ends. So.
And a lot of trade deadlines coming up in fantasy leagues.
Yeah, so start
if you
getting
guys
these
have
guys
trade
now.
deadline enabled, so yeah.
And so those are my receivers, my quarterback, my tight end. Just my last two players on this list are going to be the running back, starting with James Conner. Had 23.6 fantasy points. Actually tied Aaron Jones and Dalvin Cook as the overall running back 2 in that week. He's finished. This is his first finish in the RB1 category all year. I know he's been banged up, but he's had some healthy games and still didn't look good in those games. But after this big game, it was such a good enough game where the Cardinals said bye-bye, Benjamin, and they released him.
Yeah.
Just shortly after that game. No questions asked.
Benjamin had a good game for him this year, too, so that was pretty surprising.
When James Conner was out, Benjamin carried that load and kind of carried that offense a lot.
They just said, bye. We got Keontae Ingram.
Yeah, and Keontae Ingram's young. He looked good in his limited playing time this year. But James Conner, either way, it looks like he can finish as in that RB1 range, another maybe league winner, sleeper guy that you could trade low for, a guy that you probably drafted to be your running back 2, but a guy that can finish maybe even as your team's best running back on your fantasy team. As long as he stays healthy, he can have big games like this. We already talked about DeAndre Hopkins coming back, Marquise Brown coming back, Rondell Moore now healthy. I know Zach Ertz is out, but with those 3 receivers and James Conner and Kyler Murray, that Cardinals offense could be just something that's waiting just to explode for 30, 40 points a game. And if they're in the red zone a lot, getting these receivers open, James Conner's going to be the main guy running in those touchdowns with Kyler Murray. So a lot of upside in James Conner.
Yeah. That team's looking scary for sure, especially if Trey McBride can be a threat. Like, that's going to be scary.
And I like Trey McBride.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Looks good. He's
I
like a Zach Ertz.
He had 90 receptions his senior year.
Yeah, he was the number 1 tight end chosen in the draft, in the draft of last year. So, so just start putting in James Conner if you've been benching him. Maybe buy low for I know it's probably hard to buy low now that Benjamin's gone.
Yeah,
but I like James Conner's upside.
Yeah, he's gonna get that workload.
Finish the season after this week 10.
Yeah,
and another guy that I really like. I want to say this guy for last. He's kind of been, been talking bad about him the last 8-9 weeks now. But that's gonna be Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah,
finally finished. He finally did it. He finally finished as the number 1 overall running back in a week. I'm sure a lot of Jonathan Taylor owners can finally rejoice and celebrate because he's the reason you drafted him in that first round or even first overall.
Yeah.
And he finally did it. He finally scored 24.30 fantasy points. It's been a long time coming. He really hasn't done anything since week 1.
Yeah, maybe that Jeff Saturday move was what they needed.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what I was going to say. Like, maybe the Jeff Saturday coming back, and now Matt Ryan's back at quarterback. They got rid of Nyheim Hines.
Yeah.
So a lot of positive things that maybe didn't seem so positive when you looked at it. Like, why would they get rid of Nyheim Hines? Why would they fire Frank Reich? Why would they bring in Matt Ryan with how bad he's been playing? Maybe things you question that if you're Jonathan Taylor, do not question anymore, because those 3 things right there seem to benefit Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah.
He played 94% of the snaps in Sunday night's win against the Raiders and looked good doing it. Had 22 carries for 147 yards, 6.68 yards per carry, had a big touchdown run, and just looks like the Jonathan Taylor of last year.
Right after we make an episode completely thrashing him, it's like he hurt us and he just goes off.
And I see him doing this now for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
I'm sure if you bought Jonathan Taylor low when he was having bad games, or you shipped him low, you're either going to be super, super happy or super regretful. And I think he's back as being the number 1 running back to own in dynasty leagues.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And so if you're trying to win it now, or you're trying to build a future, and you have kind of an old back like an Austin Eckler who looks like the overall RB1 in
Yeah.
PPR leagues, go out and I say trade Austin Eckler just straight up for Jonathan Taylor. Convince a Taylor owner, and
Yeah.
if you have older running backs or something, I think Jonathan Taylor's now back in that. He's the number one running back to own in Dynasty.
Yeah.
I don't think it was a fluke week because we've seen what he can do.
No, that Colts offensive line was just looking really nice.
Yeah.
They were creating holes for him, and he was just exploding off those holes. So like,
yeah, and that's what Jeff Saturday can do. He
Yeah,
was an
he
offensive
was an
line,
offensive line.
so
He
he
knows-
came and
he
he
knows
talked
what to
some
do.
sense into
Yeah.
them, and that
yeah,
offense.
he was like, "We're just gonna pound it. We're just gonna pound
And they
it,
did.
and I'm just gonna rely on my own line." And that's what they did, and they got a dub. So
yeah. So
kudos
Jonathan
to them.
Taylor is. I know you haven't. I haven't benched him at all.
no,
Whenever he's healthy, I've still played him, but he had
Yeah.
those weeks where he's scoring 5 or less fantasy points, and
very
it's
sad. Yeah,
been super disappointing. But not anymore. And if you've stayed in that playoff hunt, perfect timing for Jonathan Taylor to get things going.
yeah, for sure. So yep, Jonathan Taylor owners can finally rejoice. I'm gonna kind of just be going into my little topics. The Eagles they lose to the Washington Commanders 32-21. Jalen Hurts shines in the loss. He finished the game as the quarterback 3 for the week. Didn't really throw much. Only had 175 passing yards with 2 passing touchdowns and 1 interception, but was productive in the running game. He rushed for 6 times for 28 yards and a rushing touchdown. But one of the downfalls was AJ Brown. He had a terrible game, but it was due to his injury. Only had 1 reception for 7 yards. Finished with 1.7 PPR points, and he's dealing with an injury. Devontae Smith is also dealing with the knee injury, but he finished the Monday Night Football game with 13.9 PPR points and had 6 receptions for 39 yards and 1 touchdown. So yeah, man, the Eagles offense, it wasn't really looking like itself. Dallas Goedert's also placed on IR. He came out with a pretty significant injury to the shoulder. Still looking like he's gonna stay like minimal in 3-4 weeks on the IR, but
4 games, yeah.
Yeah, he should be back by mid-December. Eagles have Jack Stoll, Grant Calcaterra, and Tyree Jackson at tight end. So maybe a little like worth rostering a little bit if you need.
Just watch list.
Yeah, watch list. Yeah.
I don't know any of those guys. Any of them play, but
yeah, me either. But we saw guys like Brian Robinson shine. Had 26 carries, 86 yards, 1 rushing touchdown. I know you're very high on Brian Robinson. Finished with 14.6 PPR points, but Antonio Gibson actually finished with 14.8 PPR points. Acted as the receiving back, 3 receptions for 14 receiving yards, to go along with 14 rushing yards on 14 carries and a rushing touchdown. And we already talked about Scary Terry. He went off. It's looking like the McLaurin and Heineke chemistry is back in action. 8 receptions for 128 receiving yards for 20.8 PPR points. And he currently sits at the wide receiver 13 right now. So yeah, that's my little thoughts on the Monday night game.
Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting to see now with the Eagles how banged up they are and everything. We'll see how good their offense is. Dallas Goedert, I believe, was a tight end 4 going into that game.
Yeah.
Probably won you a lot of games, and now you have to kind of rely on that waiver wire.
Yeah.
And Devontae Smith, he's had some cold games, and he finally had a good game, and then had that late fumble in the game.
Yeah.
And I'm sure if you lost by 2 points because of that fumble, that hurts. And I'm sure if you just needed 2 points from AJ Brown in that game to win, that hurts probably even more. And Jalen Hurts is still going to do what he does because he's a running quarterback. But I still think there's kind of the Eagles' offense. They'll heat it back up. It's probably just one of those fluke Monday night games. But Commanders' offense could be something to watch. Terry Scary, plug him back in your lineups. Antonio Gibson, Brian Robinson, guys that you can plug in deep flex leagues or 3 wide receiver leagues. Yeah,
and with Goddard out, that could be more target share for AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, Miles Sanders. So We'll see. It brings me to my next topic. Do you think the Kansas City Chiefs have a new wide receiver 1 in Kadarius Toney? He caught his first NFL touchdown in the Chiefs' 27-17 win against the Jags. We saw him finish with 4 receptions, 57 receiving yards, and 1 touchdown. He finished with 19 PPR points. He also had 2 carries for 33 rushing yards. So, they were using him the way the Giants used him in that one game against the Cowboys last year, and I see it continuing. Juju Smith-Schuster hasn't been practicing due to a concussion. His availability is up in the air for this week's game against the Chargers. He was the current wide receiver 22. McCall Hardman hasn't been practicing. He just went on injured reserve a couple of hours ago to his abdomen injury. He was the current wide receiver 39. And MVS, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, came back to practice on Thursday. He had a solid 15 fantasy points in PPR leagues. So there's opportunity for Toney to explode. And this Chiefs offense is explosive, man. So we can see it. It's only going to continue to get better. He's only going to get more familiar with the playbook. I've been high on him, and we'll see.
He has Tyreek Hill type speed, and
yeah,
that's why they kind of brought in Juju, and they kind of went out and drafted Sky Moore, went out and got MVS because they wanted speed from those guys. And
yeah,
Juju was hot as of late. Sky Moore hasn't really seen the field, and MVS is dropping balls like he did in Green Bay and hasn't seen the field because of that. But Kadarius Toney, like you said, I think they do have, to answer your question, I think they do have a wide receiver one in him. And I don't know if you heard Travis Kelce's comments about him, but he pretty much said, I don't even know how the Giants let that guy out of town. I don't even want to know what went on over there. I don't want to question it. I'm just happy he's on our team now because this is not a guy you just let go.
On his No Heights podcast?
Yeah, he's not only a fantasy relevant receiver, he's a franchise receiver when healthy. He's different. We see what he does when he's healthy. And I don't know if you saw that catch he made, but he was going back, and while he's going up for he's fixing his gloves. I've never seen a receiver do that
either. That was crazy.
Fixing your glove and still have the concentration to come down with the catch. Contested catch, to say the least, is just incredible. And I want to see him healthy. I want to see what he can do and plug him in, especially in that Sunday night game. I think he's going to show out. He's just one of those showboat type of players.
Yeah.
He's going to get that spotlight. He's going to go crazy.
Yeah, I was able to get him as a little throw-in player, and now I'm plugging him in my lineup.
And I'm sure a lot of people, even in redraft league, I'm sure in Dynasty, you probably held on to him just because of the age.
Yeah.
But in redraft leagues, I know he was dropped, and I'm sure he's probably going to be one of those. He's going to be like that Amon-Ra St. Brown was last year, a guy that you picked up off waivers and a guy you can now use as your main receiving weapon on your Dynasty, on your fantasy football teams.
Yeah, caught his first career touchdown, 19 PPR points in your second game with their new team. That's pretty impressive.
And now with guys missing practice, now the playbook's going to have to rely more on him. And now going forward, he's going to be the main part of that offense.
Yeah. And they might even implement him as kind of a running back wide receiver too, kind of a Debo.
Yeah.
So
where's Debo been this season?
I don't know. I really couldn't tell you, but and that brings me to my next topic. Zach Ertz out for the season. Zach Ertz is the current tight end 3 out for the season with the knee injury. Trey McBride will take over at tight end. Could be a sleeper. I personally think Trey McBride is a must add if he's on your waiver wire. In his senior year of college at Colorado State, he recorded 90 receptions for 1,121 receiving yards. Only had 1 touchdown. Only had 10 touchdowns in his 4-year college career combined, so it's not really a lot of touchdowns, but hopefully we see some goal line work for him in this Arizona Cardinals offense.
Yeah, and the Cardinals, they're not scared to take risks. I mean, one year they drafted Josh Rosen in the first round, and then the next year they go and they get Kyler Murray. So they're always going to get the next available player. They did with Zach Ertz. They signed him, and we know his talent, but they still went out and they still drafted a tight end. And not only did they draft a tight end, but he was the first tight end chosen. Yeah. They had D-Hop, and they still went out and they went to go trade for Marquise Brown. So the Cardinals, they seek talent pretty well on that offense. They know what they want and what they need. And when Josh Rosen didn't work out, Kyler Murray was ready to go. Zach Ertz is now out, and
Trey McBride's ready
to go, and D-Hop wasn't ready to go, and Hollywood was ready to go, and he was a top 12 wide receiver, top 10 possibly before he got injured. So they get those guys to get ready. They know football is filled with injuries, or in their case, a suspension, and they get guys that are talented that will be the next man up. So yeah, you said Trey McBride, if he's still there, even in redraft league, I was kind of looking at him as my next tight end to fill, maybe as a guy I can plug in late in the year, because like you said, Zach Ertz is out for the year. A lot of tight ends out. Dallas Goedert's out now in the next 4 games, and now Zach Ertz. So 2 top 5 tight ends out. So go out and try to get maybe, like I said, Cole Kmet or Dalton Schultz.
Yeah, tight end, a tough position to be.
Even Mark Andrews has been banged up this year. Kyle Pitts we talk about him a lot on the show.
Yeah, so it's been tough for tight ends this year, but hopefully they speedy recovery for all those that are injured. It's going to be bringing me into my next topic. DeAndre Swift, is he falling into running back 2, running back 3 category? We saw veteran Jamal Williams outshine him once again. And Swift just, he only had 6 carries for 6 yards. He had a rushing touchdown. He only finished with 8.2 PPR points. Jamal Williams had 16 carries, 59 rushing yards, and a rushing touchdown to finish with 11.9 PPR points. So I just feel like this backfield's a little iffy. Like, you don't really know what you're going to get. If you're starting Swift, you probably got Jamal Williams off waivers or really late in the draft. So regardless if you're going to start him or not, it's going to be a nice little flex play for you. But for DeAndre Swift owners, man, it's not looking too bright.
Yeah, I know I have him, and I'm still gonna start him.
Yeah,
because he's still getting those touchdowns.
Yeah.
I know it's not a lot. 8.8 fantasy points isn't a lot from a guy you want as your main running back, but that's one of those committees. It's one of those things where, like, that's why I kind of don't like getting like the handcuff sometimes, because Jamal Williams did fill in nicely for Swift when he was out, but now if you have both of them. Now it's like, do you start both of them? Do you start with the other one over the other?
Yeah.
Just one of those sticky situations where you really don't know what you're going to get.
Yeah, his backfield is just too iffy. The bright spot is Amon-Ra St. Brown. He continues to prove everyone wrong. 10 receptions, 11 targets, 119 yards. Had a nice little 2-yard rush. So 22.1 PPR points. That's what you want out of your wide receiver. Definitely wide receiver 1 caliber. And brings me to another question. Is this receiver, could he be a new wide receiver 1 in Green Bay? As Christian Watson had a huge day, 4 receptions, 107 receiving yards, but 3 of those 4 receptions were receiving touchdowns. Had 32.7 PPR points, finished as the wide receiver 3 for the week. And he just completely torched your Dallas defense. They're the number 2 defense in fantasy football, so definitely says a lot from a guy like Christian Watson. Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs, it could be a nice little 1-2 punch when Doubs comes back from his ankle injury.
Yeah, but I think Christian Watson's one of those things where, is it just one of those boom? Is it a fluke week or what? Because it could just be one of those games where he just went off, and then you expect that from him. And I'm sure people after that game are now putting him in your starting lines. I'm sure you went out, grabbed him off waivers, and now you're using a waiver receiver to start over guys that you've been starting all season, hoping that he can get that 30 plus fantasy point a game. Could he do it? Yeah. I mean, obviously the Packers drafted him over Dobbs in the draft.
Yeah.
But it could be either a fluke game where we don't ever see that again, or this could be the start of something special. So we'll just have to wait and see. And we'll have to wait and see when Dobbs gets healthy and he's back to see how that offense, because they really liked Dobbs when Watson was out. Now they're really liking Watson when Dobbs is out. So let's see when they're both healthy and on the field who Aaron Rodgers chooses to go to. And obviously Lazard is still there, and I still believe that's going to be one of his favorite targets to go to. So
yeah. But yeah, that pretty much brings me to the end of my topics. Next week we're gonna be next episode we're gonna be doing our little matchup evaluator. We're gonna be telling you which guys we would start fantasy wise and which guys we would sit fantasy wise. Desperate starts. So yeah, we're gonna get into all that juicy stuff in the next episode.
Yeah, I'll talk about some nice little flex sleeper plays that you can plug in, but I'll do that when we're talking about the matchups, some rookie running backs to start looking out for. So yeah, just stay tuned for that next episode. I hope you guys enjoyed the one for today. A lot of fantasy players that we haven't really talked about, I feel like, with all the guys besides like Jonathan Taylor, where we talk bad, but finally we get to talk about him good. And we talked about Toney, we talked about Cole Kmet, Dalton Schultz, Aaron Rodgers, guys that we haven't really brought up on this show a lot.
Talk about the Commanders positively.
So we kind of want to bring in some new players, some new things that we talked about, because the last 2 shows we kind of did recaps. We did our Dynasty recap, and then we did our Dolphins and Eagles recap and stuff like that.
And the Colts and stuff.
We want to bring you something new, some new players to look out for, some new players to start looking to trade for, possibly, if you're trying to make a playoff run. A lot of good. Today was a bunch of good things. We didn't really have any bad things to say, except for the injuries, of course. But
yeah, we're gonna be here giving you high quality advice, and just honest advice from us.
Yeah, so check out our podcast, of course, and just subscribe to our YouTube if you haven't already. We do appreciate the love and support, and we'll see you on the next one.
Yep, thank you for supporting, and your BFF. We are out.